What's up, family? YouTube family, growing family. How's it going? I am on my way to a pickup out in Fountain Hills, Arizona. This dude's about 30 minutes away, so I thought I would challenge myself to 30 minutes of talking to you, my family, about whatever the Spirit drops on me right now. It's been a long night. I had a big ride out to Tucson. From the Phoenix area to Tucson, it's about 90 miles or so. It took me about an hour and a half. And I saw the call come in, so it was crazy. I saw it came in. That ride pays me like 71 bucks, which, you know, it's not very profitable because I have to assume I'm going to come back an hour and a half. That's 3 hours, 71 bucks. You do the math. What is that, like $23 an hour? So I saw the call come in. It was taken by another driver. And then the Lord spoke to me. If the call comes back, take the call and then negotiate a $40 tip. That's exactly what ended up happening, which means the call was dropped by the other driver, came back into me, and I sent a message over saying, you know, I would do this ride, but I need a tip up front of $40 to cover the cost of my gas and the time I'm going to lose on the way back. They agreed. He had $40 cash. Turns out this young dude, his name was Connor, was heading down to Tucson on a family emergency. Something was wrong with his grandfather. And it turns out this dude's a young believer. Actually, he grew up in a Christian home. His mom, rock solid. Dad, rock solid, veteran. His grandfather's a veteran. And it was just an amazing pairing. I think he's a senior in high school. He's got a girlfriend who's strong in the faith. And he just had a lot of questions. He's just at a stage in his faith where he just needed time with a soldier, with a warrior, with someone who's a little bit further down the road than he is. And that ride, that was about an hour and 15-minute ride. That went by so quickly. It felt like 5 minutes. We covered so much territory, so much in the conversation, and it was just ordained of God. And that's how I live my life. I live not from my ability, I live from my availability. God is the source of my ability, and I'm just grateful that I heard God in that moment to be ready to take that ride and just hear the voice of God. I actually walked away from a $45 bonus to take that ride, but you can't put a price tag on those moments that are ordained of God, where He is using you as an instrument to encourage and to advance the life of another individual, to bring blessing and clarity and wisdom and empowerment. And so I'm grateful for young Connor and that ride. It was just, we covered so many topics in that ride. We were talking about Bible study. We were talking about relationships. We were talking about, you know, questions that unbelievers will be having, like, his sister's an atheist. We were talking about what young people are capable of accomplishing. He was 17, but I'm not cutting any slack. You know, you might be young, but that does not mean that you are in the place you should be. I mean, I cited David. David was brought up against Goliath at an age where he was likely, I think researchers think David could have been as young as 13 to 15 years old. And so, though this young man is really an anomaly amongst his peers, you know, when you look at the things of God, we're not an anomaly at all. We haven't slayed no bears. We aren't slaying no lions, surely we aren't taking out any giants. And so what I shared with him was that, don't give yourself slack thinking that you're advanced in the things of God. We're not advanced. We are not where we need to be. See, David showed us what God is able to do through a childlike spirit whose main concern was clarity of identity. See, the pathway into his destiny and seeing the giant defeated was that David was passionate about coming after God for a clarity of identity. David, through his relationship with the Lord, where David wrote the Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." So David's main ambition and passion was seeking the Lord. It was intimacy with the Father. And so through that devotion and through that obsessive passion, David became who David was. Does that make sense? God equipped David with a clarity of identity that was so strong that he was willing and able to come up against a giant, even against the negativity of his own brothers, even against the doubts of the king. And if the king doubts you and your own brothers doubt you, nobody's with you. The entire army was probably laughing at him. Especially when the king tried to put on the armor. David was probably buried in armor and swimming in that stuff, and he's like, I've never even wore this stuff. I can't do this. All I need is the clothes on my back and a few smooth stones and a sling. I'm good. So that being said, I'm not cutting you any slack. You think you might be advanced in the things of God? Most of y'all probably aren't even exposing yourself to the Word of God for more than 10 minutes a day. I need to be in the Word of God at least 2 hours a day. That's my goal. 2 hours a day in submission unto at least the audible Word of God in my car, my vehicle. So that's where the Word of God takes a priority. So I was talking to Connor about that. Several years ago, the Lord convicted me. Olympians, they train 5 hours a day for 4 years for a race that lasts 1 minute. 5 hours a day for 4 years for a race that lasts seconds sometimes. And I said, the Lord spoke to me. He said, if these athletes will train 5 hours a day for 4 years of their life for a stinking race and a piece of gold that perishes, a piece of gold that sometimes they will sell it on eBay because they realize the vanity of it, the insignificance of it, how much more should you train for eternity? How much more should you train for your identity? How much more should you train to be an instrument in God's hand, being prepared for your destiny? So several years ago, God gave me the revelation, and that's been my determined standard of just being that locked in to the Lord and making a priority the things of God. That has been my life since I was about 19 or 20 years old. When I started reading the Bible, I realized, oh my gosh, this book is a book of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and I had none of it. So that was my first prayer to God. I remember I was stationed in the Navy. I was in Hawaii, and I stood on top of my barracks. There was like this balcony, second-story balcony. I just remember a distinct moment with God where I called out to God for wisdom, having read the story of Solomon when God appeared to Solomon in a dream and told Solomon, ask for anything you want and I will grant you whatever it is you want. And Solomon, in his wisdom, prayed to the Lord for wisdom. And so that's exactly what happened to me. I called out for wisdom, called out to the Lord for wisdom. fully acknowledging that I really had no wisdom. I grew up spiritually bankrupt, socially bankrupt, financially bankrupt, physically bankrupt, and especially spiritually. I really probably never really heard the name of Jesus, definitely not in the context of the gospel or salvation. So I was literally at the end of my rope as a 19-year-old young man who longed for a sense of identity, who longed for a sense of acceptance, who knew I knew I was engaged in a war, in a spiritual battle. There was anxiety in my life. There was evidence of darkness ruling and reigning over my life, because at one time I received a Bible as a Christmas gift from my aunt, which ironically my aunt, God bless her, she is now engaged to my father, whose wife passed away, and now this woman of God and my father, who's a man of God, are now engaged to be married. So ironically enough, this woman, who will now be a type of kind of a stepmother to me, she got me a Bible as a Christmas gift. It was a Christmas Eve, and I was about 13 years old or so, 12, 13, and I didn't understand, like the Bible says, you are by nature a children of wrath. See, it's not natural to live by your pleasures and selfish desires, but when you live by nature, what it means is you're living habitually in a pattern of life. It's not natural at all, but you're living, you've made it your pattern or habitual nature and pattern of living to do only what serves yourself. And that was me. At a young age, I was by nature a children of wrath, and I didn't realize the level of spiritual darkness that is operating when you're living that life. Like the young man Connor, who his sister is a self-professing atheist, and he told me that whenever he brings up the things of God, there's manifestation that happens. Like she gets agitated, or kind of pushes him away. That's a spiritual stronghold. That's not his sister. That's not the true person coming out. That's the spiritual stronghold. That's a person being under the influence of darkness, other spirits. And so back to that Bible, when I opened up the gift that was a Christmas gift, I actually saw that it was a book, and I turned it to myself, and I saw it said Holy Bible on the side of it, and I felt this darkness that kind of gripped my soul, and this repulsiveness, like disgust, like if you had like a nasty plate of food in front of you, or it was like almost like a plate of vomit, right? Like if someone served you up a plate of vomit to eat, what would you do? You would just be repulsed and grossed out. You would push it away. And that's exactly what I did. I felt grossed out, repulsed, and I pushed it away like a nasty plate of food that was like vomit or whatever. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, like I don't even belong to myself. It was definitely a monumental moment in my life where I realized, in hindsight now, I don't know if I realized it as much then, but now I look at that moment in hindsight and realize the spiritual nature of the lives we live, and the spiritual reality of demonic possession, spiritual influence, strongholds, your soul being taken captive like you're a prisoner against the best that God has for you, against your true identity. But that happened, and the thing of God was repulsive to me. It was like vomit to me. And so it became a monument of God in my life, because it showed me that there was a definite spiritual world out there, and that you can't belong to God and the devil simultaneously. You're either a child of God or you're not. You're either the righteousness of God or you're not. And so that was a season of my life at a young age, all the way up to the time I was in college, where I was spiritually under the wraps of darkness. I did not belong to God. I was, like the Bible says, you are by nature a children of wrath. And so I was habitually doing what only pleased myself. It was a life of selfishness, a life of pride, a life of ignorance, a life of being a captive of darkness and not really even knowing it. And so by the time I got to Hawaii, when I was about 19 years old, at this time I was in the Navy, my heart had become softened and opened to the things of God. And there was a couple of experiences that helped prepare that. And one of them was in college. I took a philosophy class, and it was almost as if God used it despite the error of the ways of these philosophers. But when I took a philosophy class, it awoken in me a passion for truth, for identity, for purpose, because as I studied philosophers during that, like an introductory class, like a 101, I realized these guys, like the Platos and the Socrates, they devoted their entire lives to the pursuit of truth, and they would sit around and discuss these things and try to come to conclusions on their own about what is true. And I just loved it. I thought it was amazing. And that was what really stirred my soul up and opened me up to actually receive more information from other resources. Besides just, at that time I was growing up, it was just MTV. You know, I did what I had to do to get through school. But it was just entertainment and parties and doing what I had to do to get through school. There was nothing of personal development or growing in my sense of identity. No books or influences like that in my life until that philosophy class. And that was something in hindsight, God used that to prick me and to open me up to become more available. One, to acknowledge the lostness of my soul, and two, to actually find a way out of that, the depth of that ignorance, the depth of that state of lostness I was buried in. And I was buried. And so when I ended up in the Navy and in boot camp, we had a few hours on a Sunday to do whatever we wanted to do. And I remember somehow I gotten a hold of a Bible, and now I was open to the Bible, and it was almost as if something shifted, because now I wasn't repulsed by it. I was holding it, but I was still afraid to open it and look into it. But I just remember the Bible to me represented God, and it probably had a lot to do with that experience before of getting a Bible and being repulsed by that book. That proved the legitimacy of that book. So here I am, like several years later in boot camp, and I have a Bible that somehow got to me. I don't know if they gave them out to people in boot camp at that time. This was like back in like 99. No idea how I got a little hand Bible, but I did. And on Sunday I decided I was going to go to church, and I'll never forget that experience of going to a church service. My soul was in an interesting state because when you go to a military boot camp, they strip everything from you. They take your hair off your head, the clothes off your back. They issue you the clothes they want you to wear, dungarees. You march where they want you to march. You eat when they want you to eat. You do only what you're told to do. Your will is, you basically are stripped of your own will and desires and appetites. You become very regimented and disciplined just by virtue of being there. I'm gonna have to wrap this up because I'm getting closer to my spot here, but I'll just tell you this. When I went to this church service, I had no idea what to expect, but I was available. And that's all you need to be to have God move on your life in a mighty way, is an availability and a willingness to admit, I don't know it all. I don't know God. I don't know truth. I don't know Jesus or what he's about, but I'm available. If he's out there, if he's willing to reveal himself to me, that acknowledgement is powerful, and I acknowledge that. I went to this church service not knowing what the heck was going to happen, and I tell you, the only thing, I do not remember a message being preached. I don't remember the name of Jesus being mentioned, but all I know is when these gospel singers stepped on stage, like 4 black dudes from who knows where, some, I don't know, they might have just come right down out of heaven. But when they started singing, it was like the angels of God from the heavens came down, and the Spirit of God just enraptured me. It was just the spirit of love and of goodness, of kindness, of mercy, and I just started bawling. I felt like I was in a cloud, just floating. I just felt so much heaviness that was on my life being broken off in that moment. There is a beginning of a healing process that took place, and I didn't even hear the gospel, but I was available, and God used that moment to prick my heart and get a hook in me. And all I knew is wherever that source is, I want more of that. I want more of that. And so it was a monument that ultimately led me to the place where God brought me to a salvation experience in Hawaii, and a place where I was still at a rock bottom moment where I still didn't know who I was. I just started getting to the Bible, and this dude was hungry. I was hungry for more. I needed to have that wisdom, that understanding, that knowledge. I needed to know God, to know who I was, and to know my purpose. And that's really the foundation of the beginning of my life. The beginning of your life is when you meet God face to face and you come to acknowledge Jesus Christ is Lord and the Savior of my soul, and he is the one that's going to train me, love me, equip me. Excuse me. 1 second here. God, this is my spot. So that was the beginning of my life. That means, that's what born again means. I'm restored to my origin. I'm restored to the place of being a son of God. That's where it began. I was 19, 20 years old. So spiritually, I'm only 25. Spiritually speaking, I'm 25 years old. That's why I got that fire, that excitement, that energy, that passion, and it's not going away soon. It's only intensifying and increasing, because as you grow in the things of God, you're not supposed to get more dim. You're going to get brighter and brighter as your story goes. Hey, it was good chatting with you. I pray this blessed you. Open yourself, make yourself available, and God will show up and show out, because you're worthy of his love, of his blood. You're worthy of salvation, powered by grace.